Hi, I'm Peter Boland, and I'm here with my dear friend,
Maggie Whitehouse, and I'm here
and
with
we
my
are,
dear friend Peter Boland, and we can go on all night about that.
yeah, we are two mystics walking to a bar. I think we're stuck with that title now, Maggie.
I think we
Been
are,
it's been
yeah.
a few months. It's going okay, but we think a lot in both of our careers, if they can be called that, because I think we do all too many different things for it to be cohered under one term as career. But in all of our work, writing, teaching, entertaining, and just being a person in our neighborhoods. We are drawn toward the mystical side of religion and spirituality. And briefly put, mysticism is the conviction that direct experience is a more a more authoritative stance than simply glomming on to somebody else's experiences and their movement. Although the two are not opposed, they work deeply, deeply together. But this takes us into all kinds of interesting places, this fundamental fandom around mysticism. And today I was thinking, and I wanted to ask for your wisdom on this, Maggie. I was thinking about, I don't know if paradox is too strong of a word, but a tension or a dynamic binary in the general realm of religiosity. No matter what religion you talk about, you find these two impulses. One, to go into the interior of subjectivity, of personal experience of the divine, of the transcendent, something beyond words, beyond doctrines, difficult to talk about. And that's often portrayed in, take your pick, in every religious tradition, going into the wilderness or Muhammad in the cave or monastic practices in Zen Buddhism and the Catholic Church and so on. This business of retreating from the busyness
Mm.
of making money and family in the world. And in order to kind of clarify the space and connect more deeply with what is real, what is transcendent, that impulse towards solitude is, I feel like, a little bit in tension with the other impulse of religion, which is to experience those things and then take it back into the dusty world, the marketplace. I'm thinking of in Zen Buddhism, there's this famous thing of the 10 ox herding pictures. And it's a visual metaphor of enlightenment, looking for the ox, finding the ox, and then the ox disappears and you realize that you were the ox or whatever. And then in the very 10th painting, the monk coming back into the marketplace, a smile on his face, to live in the world and be a householder and do all the things people do. So it sort of shatters this hard binary between enlightened monk in the woods by himself or herself and the person in the community. So I'm thinking about it this way, Maggie.
Mm.
How do we build a bridge between these two impulses that I kind of feel in myself as well?
Yeah.
I long to be in the stillness and alone and away from people. But I also feel very deeply that the purpose of those depth experiences is so that I might do more good in the world, to be of service to the woundedness of the world. So, how do we reconcile these two impulses?
I think you summed it up perfectly already, but I suppose it's like that instruction when you're on an aircraft, when they say if the oxygen masks fall down, put it on you first before you try and help anyone else. And I think if you don't do that me or God and me time, because for me, it's all about talking to God and listening to God. And of course, I can get it horribly wrong, but I'm getting better at it, concentrating on what that voice is. So I think it's essential because otherwise, there's a lovely phrase I heard once, which was, she's the kind of woman who lives for others. You can tell the others by the hunted looks on their faces.
Oh
Because
boy, that's a
sometimes, if
surprise
you
ending there.
yeah, you can tell the kind of people who are always giving, always doing,
Oh
always
yeah, yeah.
out there, they're
Hmm.
usually running on empty. And you can't help another person well if you're running on empty. You literally can't. I've tried it. I know I've tried.
Yeah. And so there we have the possible shadow side of service
Yeah.
consciousness as kind of busybodiness
Well,
or
and also needing the strokes,
yeah,
particularly
yeah, yeah,
women.
yeah.
I'm going to help you so you will love me. I was a
Mm,
codependent to my mother when I was raised.
mm,
And the irony of that was, and the paradox of that was, because there's all sorts of paradoxes in this kind of thing, is that she wasn't going to be helped.
right.
So I was going to fail. So that was going to give me the message that she wasn't going to be helped, but I had to keep on going and doing it. And there came a point when she had agoraphobia and mental health issues because she had postnatal depression with both myself
Mm,
and my brother. And there wasn't much help in those days, a
yeah.
long, long time ago. And
Mhm.
ironically, how she healed was because I emigrated to the USA.
How about that?
I'm back now, but she was healed because I took that protection away from her. And my brother, who'd never had to step up before, no blame on him, yeah, I'd been there all the time, literally had to come in. My father was dead by then. And he sort of went, hang on, this is wrong. Took her back to the doctor, got her off her medication, got her medication changed, sat with her while she went through the change of medication. And by the time I got back from Montana, about 18 months later, she was off all her medicines. So the trying always to give, to help, to give, not always a good idea because you disempower the other so much.
I sometimes wonder, my family story is my mother and father were married right after the war in 1946 and began working on emigrating to America. And it took about 4 years. So they came over in 1950. And I sometimes think about that, separating from one's parents by moving halfway around the world. I don't mean to presume anything about all of their reasons. There were a lot of reasons to get out of Europe
Yeah.
in 1946, but this always struck me growing up in Ventura, California, with just me and my two brothers and my mom and dad, and having no relationships with my cousins or aunts and uncles or anything. It's like, why did they want to get so far away from their family? And I think there might have been because a few clues poked in during the rest of our, my growing up with them that things were tough between my mom and her mom, for example.
Hmm.
And not a lot of detail there, but some pretty heavy hints through the years.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, maybe there's a piece to that. So that ties into what we're thinking about today, that one needs to come apart and come separate in order for a kind of healthy autonomy to take shape, because there is in our filial piety, as Confucianism would put it, our duty bound relationships to our families that can be stifling and corrosive and sometimes destructive. And I wonder if there's a little of that going on with individuals and the community at large. So I need to get away from the community and its incessant neediness, because it really is so broken in so many ways. And then here comes that sort of Christ complex, hero complex. I'm going to swoop in and
Hmm.
put all of my time and energy into fixing everybody and everything, and how that can become actually a mechanism of avoidance
Yes.
of one's own unnamed, unresolved trauma and so on. So that's the teeter-totter of this paradox. It seems so healthy to spend some time in both, and maybe spending too much time in either is evidence of an imbalance.
Yeah. And honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. Just one day a week. I was doing a workshop a couple of weeks ago on the Dark Mother, on origins, on the deep dark feminine in the Hebrew Bible and also in the New Testament.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this vital importance of stillness and space. And I did a poll among the audience, and more than 100 people there. Not one of them would turn their phones off for a day a week. Not one. And I was
And
saying, well,
wow.
okay, talk to me about that. Why? Because somebody might need me. And I actually said, do you not realize that it might be useful to be unavailable?
Wow.
And they were
That's
going, what?
brilliant.
No, no, I can't be available. And I was saying, well, do you leave your phone on overnight? Yes, I do. Why? Because somebody might call me at 2 a.m. to say they need a lift to the hospital. And I was sort of going, And you might have been drinking that night. You might not be absolutely capable. There are taxis. There are people. We lived without these phones for thousands of years.
Oh my gosh, especially in our age bracket. And if your audiences are anything like mine, they're my age and older. And we all grew up without these things. And it's not hard to look inside one's own biography for a point of reference that,
Mm.
it's okay if I write you a letter and I don't hear back from you for 3 weeks.
Yes.
That's okay. That's how it used to be done.
Yeah.
Or in the old days, 6 months because it had to get on a ship and sail across
Yeah,
the sea.
and we had to write it in cursive. I know we're doing there's
No,
a lovely British sketch about we were raised in a cardboard box in the middle of the road.
I've seen that
Cardboard
one.
box, that was luxury. We were
A box, what luxury. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's true. When my cousin was made redundant, I was rather fresh-faced in spirituality in those days. So I wrote him this wonderful letter about, this is a wonderful opportunity for you, and this will be amazing, and you can do this, that, and the other. I wrote it out 4 times because I had to write it in cursive. Because in those days you did not type a letter to somebody you loved. And even then, by the time I got to the fourth time, I thought, this is no letter I should be writing to my cousin.
Hmm.
He's not ready for this letter, and I am being intrusive and assuming things. So, because I had to write it because I'm dyslexic, so I had to write it out several times. And by the end of it, I knew I shouldn't send it. Whereas nowadays, I'd send an email and it would be gone, and it might have torn him apart.
Yeah. Yeah, that old draft feature on my email is really important to write a letter, to write an email and say to oneself, I will just leave that in the draft folder. And 24 hours from now, if I still need to send it, I'll send it. And I
Mm.
almost never do.
Yeah.
And I'm not sending, horrid flame emails around, but almost anything. You just think of it differently later. And so I know that you're so masterful in your own life in balancing, and you wouldn't use that word, but I would, in at balancing outside time, indoor time, solitude, community, time with humans, time with animals, time in prayer, time in gardening and doing. How do you how did you arrive at the balance that you have struck? What calls you away from the laptop and some big editing writing job and out into the moors and vice versa? You're out there like now I feel like getting back to work. What's that? What's happening in there?
Oh, well, that is really nice of you. I made a funny face there because I don't think I make a very good mash of it at all. But I wasn't being rude about your kindness
No,
in
I
saying
know.
I do. Well, the simple thing, you have a dog, we have a dog. They need a walk. It's a start.
Absolutely.
It's a start. And I've also now got horses that I take some care of, but not a lot of care of. I am in the incredibly lucky position in that I just take care of them a little bit for somebody else who owns them, deals with the vet's fees and all the stable fees and all that kind of thing. I just go out and have a cuddle every now and then. But I think it's basically about how you start the day. I think there's an old Irish prayer about starting the day with a prayer, and it works. And if you don't have time to start there with the prayer, it just goes worse and worse and worse. And every morning when I get up, I either walk the dog, run, or meditate. And sometimes I'll do two out of the three.
Yes.
And I can do that because I'm a freelance. I
Yes.
couldn't do that when I did an everyday job.
Yeah.
But I also did a lot of studying with a chap called Stuart Wilde, one of these amazing New Age teachers who was really tough. He basically said, if you want to deal with your ego, you want to get your ego in line, get up every morning at 4:30 and jump in a cold river for a month. And that'll do it. Well, of course, I didn't do that because I didn't.
That's
But
miserable.
it's actually about having this incredible access to discipline. One of Stuart's teachers said, if you don't turn up for the workshop on time, you never come to another workshop again, which seemed a little excessive because he would have the workshops in Los Angeles or South Africa or something and give you a week's notice. It's not the same, but my teacher of Kabbalah in London shut the door at 8 o'clock. You didn't get in. after 8 o'clock because he did the great invocation to create a sacred space, and it
Yeah.
was respectful for everybody who was there. My husband and I traveled from Birmingham, which was a 3 hour drive every Thursday evening to get there. And there was just one evening in 8 years where we arrived at 8:05. We didn't knock on the door because we respected that discipline. So we
Yeah.
had a pizza and drove back to Birmingham. But you'd tell that to a lot of people and they'll go, no, and we're so addicted to having to have it now that we don't have the respect for the space or the respect for the discipline. And I'm
Yeah.
sounding very old but I'm quite good at that discipline of saying just well, apart from anything else, my husband smokes roll-ups. He smokes six a day. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
It's And every time he has a roll-up, he goes outside and he has 5 minutes sitting or standing and thinking.
Yeah.
And he'll come back in wiser every single time. So I've learned from that.
I smoked cigarettes myself in my 20s and I put it down eventually, but it was something that I miss about it was here in California, tobacco smokers were increasingly exiled out of public spaces.
Hmm.
Because when I first started in the 70s and 80s, we were all sitting in restaurants and bars smoking our heads off, and
Yeah.
that all came to an end. But so you had to go outside and just be by yourself. And this is before cell phones. And you would just stand there and watch the traffic. And oh, here comes a crow. And there's just sort
Yeah.
of this quiet, I'm not doing anything for 5 minutes till this thing burns down. And there was something contemplative and also, if I could, regular and almost disciplined about it. Uh, the other word for it is, in my case, addicted to nicotine. But there was a regularity that just kept coming around. And I'm thinking as we're talking about this punctuality or discipline issue and how baked in that is to um, monastic practice and contemplative practice. It isn't, at least in most major world religions, it isn't following your whimsy. There's a schedule,
Mm.
and you accept leadership and you defer to leadership, whether it's in a Zen monastery or more Christian contemplative practice. And the early desert amas and abbas,
Mm.
mothers and fathers in Egypt and Syria in the second and into the third century, before the Council of Nicaea, before Constantine, before Christianity became empire. Some of the earliest practitioners of Christianity didn't have a lot of texts.
No.
They may not have known how to read, but they would go out into the desert with an oral tradition of what it meant to follow the teachings of Jesus, and they would do that, what became the monastic tradition,
Mm.
living away from the distractions of the city and practicing asceticism and the denial and the mortification of the flesh, even in some cases.
Mm.
Uh, I've been dialoguing with someone on Substack who goes by the name Angel Deer, and he's a young guy, American guy, living in France with a farm, and writes a lot about indigenous cultures, and has apparently pursued indigenous teachings around the world, and talks sometimes about this same issue from the other side.
Mm.
That in indigenous practice, according to his accounts, you never know when a smoke is going to start, when a talking circle is going to start, when a sweat lodge is going to start. They don't go with linear time. And he's talking about how, as a kind of a man with one foot in both worlds, how he calls it empire thinking, this
Mm.
idea of the rigidity of time,
Yeah.
calendars, days, dates, hours, and minutes, and then framing it all as disrespectful if you violate that kind of imperial
Mm.
structure. You and I come from a culture where those things actually matter. And I remember
Yeah.
visiting Costa Rica and having patiently explained to me that in Costa Rican culture, when you invite someone to dinner at 6 p.m., they could easily show up at 9, and it isn't a faux pas at all. You just need to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And so I want to be thoughtful about that as well, that we can have both, because in indigenous culture there is also great deference to leaders and expertise and experience. So I don't know where this all lands with our discussion, but it's a fascinating kind of anthropological
It
point
is.
almost.
It's like Chronos and Kairos, isn't it? It's the
Okay.
eternal now, or the
Yeah.
are you going to show it up? And my career in journalism, most of it was in radio, and I would have to get the breakfast show to the Greenwich time signal
Uh,
every hour.
Absolutely. Or else go
Absolutely
get
spot
another
on.
job. Yeah.
And at quarter past and at half past, you went to the newsroom for the update for the breakfast news. So the timing was exquisite. And even now, I'm known as One Take White House if I do some filming. And I can
Well,
usually just record something exactly that length because of the discipline behind it. So I think,
yes,
in a way, you can free form once you've learnt the discipline.
that's right.
There is to be a sweat lodge. The sweat lodge will happen when the sweat lodge needs to happen, but we need to have a sweat lodge. And we'll
Yeah.
give up that timing to when everybody goes, okay, time for the sweat lodge.
Yeah.
But the thing about that, like smoking now, in the old days, everybody used to smoke in the journalistic offices I was in. They'd be and typing away on the typewriters.
Right.
But now, when you go outside to have a cigarette, you've got to be slightly contemplative. Okay, you can stare at your phone, but if you don't, you are taking this time out. So you
Yeah.
can use it as a kind of a meditation. And I think God doesn't interrupt.
Hmm.
When you're very, very busy, unless it's an emergency, I find it very rare that the voice comes. But if I just give it a minute and go, oh, I don't know, what do you think? An answer will come. And I've got to the point now where I think, I don't know what to do next. What do you think? And the answer will always be unexpected.
Yeah.
So I think that the role of the mystic is to say the veil of the temple was torn when Jesus died, which means the veil into the Holy of Holies is torn, which means that the Holy One, it's a metaphor, obviously, is accessible to all of us. We've
Yeah.
just got to show up and listen.
Yeah.
God talks to all of us all the time, but we just don't listen. So I think unless you will take that contemplative time, you're doing it on your own reconnaissance, and that isn't going to work out as well as if you do it from the reconnaissance or above or within.
I
Within.
think so many folks approach religion and spirituality, just my own students in my college classrooms, young people, 19 to 24-ish generally. And here in the very southwest corner of the United States, my college is about 10 miles from the Mexican border. Most of my students are Latino, and most of them are Roman Catholic, but maybe not deep practitioners, maybe just culturally
Yeah,
Catholic. And so to work with them through a semester length course about world religions is just delightful. And you get from a lot of students this idea that they haven't really thought deeply or even experienced deeply the power and beauty of their own tradition, let
mm,
alone any others. And so it's really fun to kind of approach all of that and recognize some of the dynamics we've been conversing about, namely that the way the two realms fuel each other,
mm,
solitude and community. And I find so many students, particularly approaching religion this way, that I need more information, I need more knowledge, I need more clarity about all the doctrines,
yeah,
and I will figure this thing out through information.
yeah,
And it's so delightful to get to traditions like Taoism, where the and Buddhism, where shunyata and yin, emptying out, leaving space is the advice. What's that line in the Tao Te Ching? In the pursuit of knowledge, every day something is added. In the pursuit of Tao, every day something is
yeah,
dropped.
yeah,
And emptying out, like that word Paul talks about Jesus, the way he was able to become the Son of God was that he was able to empty himself out so
yeah,
completely, kenosis. And I think about solitude as the place where we can let the world kind of drop. And I no longer am driven by the question um, who am I? What am I? What am I supposed to do? But I am now just content experiencing the totality and no longer trying to draw the line between myself and everything else. There's just this that is
Yeah.
without definition or word. It's hard to get that in a busy party or in
Yeah.
an online chat, or
Yeah.
at your worldly job. Although all that stuff is beautiful and we all do great work there, but without that, fueling of the emptiness, I don't know what we would have to give when we gathered together.
Yeah. I use a phrase quite often, which is the job of a minister is either to be a museum curator or a channel of the living waters.
That's nice.
Because all the information is old. I'm on Instagram now, shock horror,
I'm
because I've got a
sorry.
comedy agent. I know it's terrible, but there you go. And putting up videos on there, and it's
You are
just
killing it lately. I see so many videos of you. I on other social medias, on Facebook mostly, but I'm not on Instagram much. But I love how you've just tackled that. I think it's a great tool.
well, thank you very much. Now I've forgotten what I was going to say about
Oh
it.
dear. You
No,
were you were
no, that's
making a
not your
video for
fault, is it? It probably wasn't that interesting. Um,
I will mute my mic here for a second.
no, 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 please don't. It'll come back to me. You keep talking. I'm
Okay,
just
okay.
having a senior moment here.
Oh dear. I we have to use all these tools.
We
And
do
you and
have
I,
to use these tools, and we have to use them with what discernment we can. And it is very interesting what people are picking up on there because the
yeah,
the three ones that are the most popular, as one of the ones is that Christianity is not an exit plan for the afterlife.
right.
And it's about now, being here now. And what's really interesting me is the amount of atheists who've come along and said it's the first time I've ever heard a Christian say that.
See, we never know. See, a thing I've been teaching for 35 years, I'm sick and tired of saying it,
Yeah.
but I say it again because it's pretty good. And then somebody just has their awakening. It's like, I've never heard that before. It's like
Yeah.
that, it's like Denver was asked once, do you ever get tired of singing Take Me Home Country
Yeah.
Roads? He said, no, I never get tired of it because it's not my song anymore. It
Mm.
belongs to them. And when I hear a stadium full of people singing along, he's got that John Denver grin from ear to ear.
Yeah.
That's what it's like for us teachers too. We've been talking about this stuff our whole lives but to say it in a new room, and I loved how at that recent event you had 100 people. That is a really
Mm.
incredible turnout given these times and these
Yeah.
topics. That's a lot of people who might be hearing these things for the first time that you've been teaching forever.
Yeah. And also one tends to think that people have the grounding that you've had if you've been in this work for all this decades or possibly centuries than you and I have. But I find out more and more that people haven't got anything like the grounding, and you
That's right.
literally have to start from the beginning again and again
Every
and
time.
again. And of course,
Yeah,
Jesus had to do that too with people. He was starting
that's
at the beginning. And I love the fact that all the way through the Bible, they're following exactly what you're saying. Jesus was always trying to go off on his own. They never
isn't
let him, but he was always trying to go and get a bit of me time. Moses
exactly.
had to go out into the desert to learn, and then he had to bring it back to Egypt, and then he had to take them out into the desert again, which I think is an analogy for you give up your addiction, and then you are in the desert with all your personalities going, oh, we want to go back to Egypt. Now we want to go back to Egypt. But my favorite is the book of Esther, where she's got to go in front of the king who's already got rid of one recalcitrant wife, and he has the right to have her killed. He hasn't called her to him for 30 days, so the marriage is not going very well, given that they haven't got any children. Um, and he would be calling to him within the 30 days to conceive a child, if nothing else.
Mm,
And she's got to go and ask him to save her people. And when she agrees to do it, she says, pray for me for 3 days. And she takes full 3 days. And at the end of it, it's mistranslated now, but it actually says she puts on her Malkut, which is she puts on her royal kingdom. She comes into the kingdom of heaven, if you like. At the end of it, she's balanced enough to say, okay, I do this, and if I die, I die. I
yeah.
mean, wow. And
Yeah.
it's there in all these texts about saying you've got to come back to yourself. And of course,
Yeah.
most of us aren't even trained to be ourselves. We're living in the false self all the time of who we think we are. And that is something that does tend to come easier to you when you're older because you start thinking, I
Mhm.
can't be asked to wear makeup today. I'm not wearing a bra. I did a whole I did the whole meeting of my great nephew with my brother, with the family, a real event with no underwear on. I don't care.
Yeah.
They didn't know that. It's probably far much too much information for you, but there comes a point later on where you can relax and say, "Oh no, I just need a bit of time out, really."
Yeah. There's a certain freedom that comes with age, there's no doubt. I read those passages in the New Testament where Jesus goes off by himself.
Mm,
And you're absolutely right. He does this over and over and over again. And, maybe I didn't grow up in the Christian tradition, as I've shared with you many times, but I imagine kids growing up in Sunday school kind of get the company pitch that, well, we had to go talk to his father God and so on. It's all sort of it's all of one kind of identity. But now that, and I know you and I and maybe many folks listening and watching can relate to this as well, that in the performance business as a musician, as a professor, as a speaker out in public, and all the things that you do as a comic and minister and speaker and workshop leader, and when we get on stage and we just have a ball, we love it, we
yeah,
come to life there, and the meet and greets before and the meet and greets after, it's all just wonderful.
yeah,
But when it's over, I am just done. And I need to just that moment when I get back in my car, just
yeah. When I drive home
and
from a gig, it may be an hour's drive, and I'll still be wound up when I get home because I have to focus on the driving.
well,
My
sure,
husband knows perfectly well it's 2 hours once I get home to decompress, to close down.
and so I'm fed by both things. I'm like
Yes,
never more ecstatically happy than when I get off stage after or when
yeah,
I'm done with class after just a mind-blowing
yeah,
conversation discussion, hearing from students I've never heard from, just revelation after revelation. I'm just walking out of there going, how lucky am I that
yeah,
I got to be a part of that. And what a gift that is, and how deep it drives me back into the depths of my own spiritual experience. They think I'm doing them a favor,
yes.
know,
I
and
know.
and
I often think I should be paying you because whenever I teach, I learn. Even
oh,
as
so
I'm
much.
speaking it, I learn. And the questions, I always say to people, heckle me, not as a comedian, because that's annoying,
Yeah,
but
please.
in a talk, say, I don't get it. What are you on
Yeah,
about? No,
yeah,
I don't agree. Because apart from anything else, that helps me and them.
yeah.
And
Oh,
they
I love
know that they can do that. I'm not some pie in the sky person that's saying it's like this.
and I suppose, and I've watched you work as well. I suppose, I my own teaching has, whether it's in a college setting or off campus, it's there's this curious balance between preparation and spontaneity.
Mm,
And I remember being a brand new lecturer right out of grad school, walking into my very first ever philosophy class. I still have all of my typed lectures. I would literally type a
hmm
lecture in like 24-point font and just walk in and put it on the podium and just kind of work through it. And
yeah,
then I'm essentially reading an article that I've written.
yeah.
It was awful. and, and and then gradually the asides and the spontaneity and the improv would work its way in, and
Yes,
eventually the improv became 90% of it and the very brief outline was 10%.
yeah,
And now I hardly use notes at all. I mean, I just walk into a room and I know what the three main points
yeah,
are today, and off we go. And I look people in the eye, and it all comes to life. And so it's part of the thread of our discussion today,
yeah,
which is how you and I have sort of balanced yin and yang, or Apollo and Dionysus, whatever one of these wonderful
yeah,
cultural touchstone binaries are, order versus disorder,
yeah.
and allowing just enough of that softness into the structure.
Yes.
To That's life. And the best musicians and artists are just sort of through all the years of trying to do that, have if they're lucky, gotten to a place where it kind of flows and we all get to have fun.
Yeah, yeah. I think we probably better close now, Peter. I could yatter
Yeah.
on with you for hours, but I've
Speaking
got
of
a poem.
structure,
I've got a poem by Jan Richardson. You may not have heard of her, but
oh,
she writes
please.
the most extraordinary prose. She's a Christian, and she wrote a book called The Cure for Sorrow, a book of blessings after her husband died. And she
Mm,
admits there's no cure for sorrow, but the poems might help. And I wanted to do this one because it's one of those poems that tells you what not to do when someone's grieving. And we lack so much of that. We have so much advice of what to do. So I'd like
mhm.
to read this on what not to
Oh, please,
do. Is that
please.
which is it's called The Blessing You Should Not Tell Me. Do not tell me there will be a blessing in the breaking, that it will ever be a grace to wake into this life so altered, this world so without. Do not tell me of the blessing that will come in the absence. Do not tell me what does not kill me will make me strong, or that God will not send me more than I can bear. Do not tell me that this will make me more compassionate, more loving, more holy. Do not tell me this will make me more grateful for what I had. Do not tell me I was lucky. Do not even tell me there will be a blessing. Give me instead the blessing of breathing with me. Give me instead the blessing of sitting with me when you cannot think of what to say. Give me instead the blessing of asking about him, how we met, or what I loved most about the life we shared. Ask for a story or tell me one, because the story is finally the only place on earth he lives now. If you could know, excuse me, what grace lives in such a blessing, you would never cease to offer it. If you could glimpse the solace and the sweetness that abide there, you would never wonder if there was a blessing you could give that would be better than this. The blessing of your own heart, opened and beating with mine. I was widowed when I was young. And oh God, that poem would have been such a help because I ended up having to cope with everybody else's trying to cope
Yes.
on top of what I was coping with.
Right.
So the paradox often is do nothing. It's the Taoist thing. When nothing
Yeah.
is done, nothing is left undone.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
People learn that in solitude. You forget it in community.
Yeah. We need both.
Right.
We
Amen.
need chronos and kairos. We need community and we need silence. We need company. We need aloneness. And I think the modern world, we don't get enough of those paradoxes.
No, you have to choose it.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
if you're watching this, turn your phone off for a day a week. See if you can do it. Start with an hour. I know it's difficult, but oh, it's so freeing.
Yeah. Amen.
Peter, bless you. Thank you so much for being with
Bless
me
you,
today.
Mary.
It's lovely to talk to you always.
Always, always. Bye, everybody.
Bye.